Hi, everybody. We are gathered here from Vienna, Alfred and me, Bergen, Alois, and Cambridge, Jonathan. And I asked you all to have this conversation because in the last months, since the 1st of January 22, actually, the matter of Wittgenstein's works in the public domain has gained momentum. There is a lot being written, a lot being published, as far as I know. And I was curious, what does it actually mean? What I see is that there are many Tractatus new translations coming out, at least 2 in English, new translations. Also a new French translation, and further in Greek, in Arabic languages, and so on. Now, perhaps you will discuss later the question, how much sense does it make to translate the Tractatus anew? There is a bon mot going on in Vienna, let them learn German and not read translations, but of course, yeah. But how much sense does it do to do something just because it is presumably free of charge now and not concentrate on works not strictly by Wittgenstein, but from his Nachlass, like Culture and Value, that might be more interesting to translate anew or correct the previous translations. Anyway, it seems to me that everybody is jumping on the wagon of gratis now, sometimes with very noble purposes, like, for example, this new Italian website called the Wittgenstein Project. Let me show it. You certainly know it. Michele Lavazza, its initiator, is a very nice man, and as I said, the purpose is very noble, because he wants, along the lines of free culture, make Wittgenstein available to everybody, everywhere, in all possible languages. Of course, he also cannot publish Culture and Value, for reasons that you will discuss now. And so let's go ahead. I would like to say that we are recording this. We all don't know if this conversation will ever be published. I think it would be great to have a proper conference when all peoples are allowed to meet again live, perhaps this autumn. Invite many more people who are involved in these processes. But let's start somewhere now. Wittgenstein and the public domain. Jonathan, maybe I can ask you first, because after 30 years at the Wren Library at Trinity College, that definitely has the rights on Wittgenstein, according to his own last will, perhaps you can screen the situation the best. Your micro, Jonathan. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yes, as you say, there has been quite a bit of interest lately in publishing translations of the Tractatus. Now, the copyright in the Tractatus is, compared with the rest of Wittgenstein's works, is fairly straightforward in that it was published during his lifetime, and therefore copyright lapsed 70 years after his death. So from the 1st of January this year, the Tractatus has been out of copyright. So this would allow people to not only to publish it, but to make translations of it. Now, translations are generally, although I'm sure every translator would tell you they put in, there is an awful lot of personal and artistic content in what they do. They are regarded as derivative works derivative of the original. So generally, whenever anybody wanted to make a translation of a published work, they need the permission of the copyright owner of the original. So this would be the case with the Tractatus. So that is probably the reason why now in this last few months we've heard news of a rush of new translations of the Tractatus. That is, even translations of it were under copyright, or was they under copyright? They were subject to copyright restrictions on the original, which, as I say, has now been lifted on the 1st of January this year. So that's simple. That accounts for copyright in things that Wittgenstein published during his lifetime. So this presumably also covers the small items that he published during his lifetime. The short article for the, I was going to say the Aristotelian Society, but I may be wrong, and his review. So, but however, the majority of Wittgenstein publication has been since his death. The work done first by the trustees and by their successors. Would you like me to? Do you like me to move into this area yet? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, this comes under a different section of British copyright law. Just very briefly, and I'm not a copyright lawyer, it's just as I understand it. Items that, unpublished items, were in previous British copyright law were subject to an indefinite copyright protection. So bizarrely, medieval manuscripts, texts of medieval manuscripts could still be in copyright in the 20th century, which seems very, very odd to us. But when we brought our copyright law in line with that of the European Union, we extinguished this never-ending right and wanted to bring it in line with 70 years as with published works. However, there were a group of people, small group, but vocal, I believe, who actually were making a certain amount of money from the copyright of one of their relatives, say. That it was regarded that they were losing this benefit unless there could be some sort of arrangement made in the law which allowed them to, or some sort of compromise, which allowed them to have the benefit for maybe a bit longer or something like that, which is essentially what happened. So they chose, the Copyright Act was 1988, could be 89, but essentially the arrangement they made was that for all works unpublished at the author's death and still unpublished before August 1989, copyright would expire at midnight on the 31st of December 2039. So that's.
Jonathan, may I share screen and show this, what you are saying in written form, so that perhaps we can follow better? Because you sent me, do you allow?
Yes, if you wish.
Yeah.
That's very good, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. So there are a couple of additions to add to that. We can see here. So for something that was unpublished during the author's death, but published before 1st of August 1989, and where the author died less than 20 years before publication, copyright would expire 70 years after the death of the author. So you can see there's a case there that, you know, some Wittgenstein items might come in that category, and also for the work unpublished at the author's death but published before 1st of August 89, and where the author died more than 20 years before publication, the copyright expires 50 years after publication. So that uses the old British limit of 50 years. So the question we have in regard to Wittgenstein, I think, is which of these categories does any particular text fall into? And when I say a text generally is what someone wants to publish, really. So it may be the text in terms of a book, or it may be the text in terms of a whole manuscript, or it may be a text in terms of a section of a typescript or something like that. Now, I think the best way of approaching this is to say that all of the material in the Nachlass is in copyright until 31st of December 2039, unless we find a reason why it isn't. So I think the easiest way is to take that final date when the whole Nachlass will go into the public domain, and then look at reasons why maybe certain texts may not be covered until that date, and that's probably, I think, where the major issues lie. So yes.
Jonathan, may I ask you, when it says died less than 20 years before publication or died more than 20 years before publication, how is this calculated? Does one add 20 years from the 29th of April 51, and then if, for example, the Prototractatus was published before the 29th of April 71, then it goes under one rule, and if it was published after that date, it goes under the second rule, or how does one calculate these years?
The brutal answer is I don't know, but generally it's generally in copyright means when they're talking about a term of years, they normally mean of full years. So it would be 20 years after the 31st of December in the year of the author's death. So,
okay, yeah. Good.
But
May I make a remark, Radmila?
Yeah.
I'm very grateful, actually, Jonathan, for your overview. I think for me, it is the first time it's a little bit clear what are the different cases. So case 1 to case 4, I think it would be quite helpful to find an example for each of these cases here. We can discuss this later. I have one question. Maybe it's a very silly question, but just a kind of fundamental question. Are we absolutely sure that as a UK copyright is applicable to Wittgenstein's case? And if, why? Was citizen or the place of origin, or what is the reason why British copyright is applicable here?
Well, yes, you've hit two of the reasons right on the head there. Being a UK citizen and the fact that the will was made in England. So that's essentially why it should be applicable.
I didn't understand quite.
Sorry, the fact that he was a citizen and the will was made in England was.
But he was citizen only from 1939. Before he was Austrian citizen.
Yes, yeah. But when he made it, he was.
When he died.
Yeah.
This is the important point. You see, not where it is, on which place they are located now, or something like this, because there, are parties in England, parties in Austria. So the important point is when he died, he was British citizen.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And the will was it was an English will which went through an English court. So yeah. I mean, he does say in his will that this relates to such materials as there are in England. But that's really a physical thing, as opposed to something like copyright, which, the materials, as you know, can be anywhere. Copyright is this very vague, ethereal thing, but yeah.
And he mentions the materials that are with his family in Austria. But perhaps this is a good moment to show the last will, Alfred?
Yeah. I just wanted to.
We can return to this document later.
Because
but
there is one point I also wanted to ask Jonathan. Where is it? I cannot find it. Sorry. So, can you see?
No, something has been deleted.
Sorry. God. What did we do before, Radmila?
Press again on Bildschirm freigeben and choose another open window.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe now?
Yeah.
It does work. Okay. It's not a good copy. Maybe I can tell a little story behind this. When the Austrian National Library bought the first manuscripts in 1979, immediately after this, we got a letter from Rush Rees. Actually, he wrote to the ministry, and Rees wrote here, maybe I can read this for you. He was pointing at the last will and said, so he was writing in German, very, very good German, excellent German. I will read it in German. Im Namen der Rechtsinhaber aller zu Zeiten seines Todes nicht veröffentlichten Schriften Ludwig Wittgensteins möchte ich darum bitten, dass der jetzige Besitzer der oben genannten Manuskripte, which is the National Library, uns, den Rechtsinhabern gegenüber erklärt, dass er die uns zustehenden Rechtsgüter im Rahmen unseres Urheberrechts an den oben genannten Manuskripten respektiert. So, just to translate it very quickly, Rush Rees asks kindly to confirm the copyrights of the three persons which are mentioned in the last will, also for these manuscripts which the Austrian National Library bought in this moment. And there was an answer then that, of course, we will recognize this. But it's very interesting that Rush was just immediately after. Of course, he knew this. It was bought from Thomas Domborough. And then he asked, please confirm the copyrights are not at your library, but they are with us. And
Which year was this, Alfred?
in the same year, 1979, just in November, after, I think, two weeks after we bought this letter came. And there was an answer from our ministry that of course we will respect the copyrights of the trustees. But I wanted to point at this first part here, where he says, disposing of all my estate except any money or other property situated or being in Austria. So could this be a case of manuscripts which remained in Austria? Because then there would be an exception, but I think it's not, that would not be the case here for the copyright question. Or how do you read this?
Well, we're coming to one of these. We're coming to one of the this type of thing really sort of relates or revolves around British law. How would a case like this be looked at in British law? And because it's common law as opposed to civil law,
Yeah.
It's a case of judicial opinion. So, and judicial opinion is always based on precedent, the precedent of previous cases. So it's really, we're having to second guess a judge here. But my feeling is that what he's saying here is that he's happy for his property in Austria to remain in the family, but he then goes on to talk about all the copyrights in all mine published writings.
Yeah.
Go down, which I think is generally be interpreted as the entire Nachlass,
Which is in this section 3 here.
Yeah.
If I may say, in the first paragraph, I think he's talking about the property of the Wittgensteins, because which I own or to which I am entitled. Even after he revoked his rights on his fortune in 1919, he remained entitled. That's why I think this is this is directed at the real estate and cash of the Wittgensteins, of which he still was part, even if he never used it. And it separates itself from all the written from the Nachlass, from his philosophical work. This is how I understand it, but just wanted to point out, he's talking not about written his writings that are in Austria, but property and money that he's entitled to. Completely different thing, no?
Yeah.
I would have.
Sorry.
I would have read it in the same way as Radmila. I thought that one thing is property, money, and the question becomes whether copyright is a property or whether one would call copyright a property.
Now, I just wanted to say the same thing,
Yeah.
Radmila. I think also the property, if it is manuscripts, would not change the situation that the property is different from the copyright.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the Austrian National Library bought the manuscripts, the physical manuscripts, but did not get the copyright by this act. So I think we agree in this point.
Yeah.
One question we can think about is in all my unpublished writings.
Yeah.
What does that cover?
And Jonathan, and what does this mean? All my unpublished writings and also the manuscripts. Why and? I could never understand this. This is the same thing. Unpublished are the manuscripts. Why does he say and also?
I think what he's giving both the physical manuscripts and typescripts and the copyright in them. I think that's what he's trying to say here. But I mean, the thing I come to here is something that's never really been discussed that I know of, is certainly in the case of other authors in unpublished writings, and I'm sure a judge would see it as this, would include the correspondence. Now, neither the trustees or Trinity has ever tried to claim copyright in the correspondence, and I don't think they ever would. But it would be interesting to see a legal opinion of that, at least.
British legal opinion.
I mean,
Yeah.
would one, Alfred, if one wrote in German, Schriften, and let's say that's the equivalent to writings, would one subsume the correspondence under Schriften?
Yeah, I don't know really.
I mean,
This was one of my questions I wanted to discuss here.
I think that's a very interesting question, the question of the correspondence, especially if it becomes philosophical and there's philosophical writing. But I actually had another reading of all the copyright in all my unpublished writings and also the manuscripts and typescripts. There of another reading than Jonathan proposed. I thought, now he thinks primarily of his writings, so I mean his autographs, and then of course he dictated some of them into typescript, some of them were typed by others, but then you have also lecture notes which were typed, or Weismann has made excerpts from the manuscripts and had them typed out. So that would be manuscripts and typescripts thereof, which Wittgenstein maybe no longer has an overview of how many there are around. I mean, the Weismann Nachlass, the Skinner Nachlass, there's a lot around, right?
Yeah.
And that's what maybe that phrasing wants to capture, not only the writings in the strict sense, but also all the derivatives. To the extent he has a claim in copyright with regard to them.
Yeah. I mean, my feeling is it goes back to I give. So I give all the copyright, etc. I give also the manuscripts and typescripts thereof.
So you're not reading, I give all the copyright in all my unpublished writings and in also the manuscripts?
No,
Okay.
no, very, yeah, that's very, thank you. That's makes it much clearer what I'm trying to say. Thank you, Alice. Yeah.
Okay, the copyright and the physical manuscripts, you mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, then it becomes clear. Yeah.
I tend to think that's how wills tend to be written. I've seen a lot in my time as an archivist, and I think that's how that's my feeling anyway of what it means.
But Jonathan, that would imply that if Anscombe, Rees, and von Richt only had wished, they could have, with this will as their basis, required that the ÖNB returns the manuscripts to them.
I don't think so. Well, again, I just think
Well, that would mean that the trustees not only should get the copyright in the manuscripts and typescripts, but they should also be entitled to dispose of them as they think best. If they think everything is to end up at Trinity Wren, then they could have referred to that interpretation of the will.
Yes, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I was thinking because they were in Austria, that might be covered by the first paragraph, but maybe not. I know that when the manuscripts went to the OMB, there was a lot of discussion about what the will actually allowed the trustees to do, but clearly they didn't feel that they could storm in and take them back to Cambridge.
Yeah, the copyright of all my unpublished writings. I think it's pretty clear by that he means everything he wrote philosophically, no matter where it is at the moment. For Austria, I have the feeling that what he means is other kinds of property or immovable property, but further in the will, when he gives the copyright, it is everything he has ever written.
Yeah, I mean the one caveat I'll say about that is there might be a difference between what he meant and what a judge perceives that he meant.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Radmila, you said something interesting. I don't know whether you meant it and what the judge is going
Probably not
to think what you meant. But you said my unpublished writings means the philosophical writings. So the passages in secret code which are not philosophical. I mean, some of them are philosophical, but a great many of them are not philosophical. You would exclude them.
No, I don't exclude. First of all, my feeling is that he didn't mean the correspondence.
Okay,
because also psychologically, I can't imagine that he or anybody from his family or from his generation might have thought that his letters would be interesting to anybody. Now about the coded remarks. Just 2 weeks ago, we had a discussion with Marjorie Perloff about it. She was asked, because she has translated now for the first time in English the coded remarks. And the question was, does she think that Wittgenstein would have wanted the coded remarks to be known? We all know that Mrs. Hanscombe didn't want them to be, but how about Wittgenstein? And Marjorie was not sure, but I reminded her on all the wartime notebooks, on the very first page is written in his hand, in the case of my death, to be sent to my mother to Vienna and then to Bertrand Russell, no? And now his mother could very easily have read the code, the coded remarks, if she wanted, because it was the family code. The whole family could read it. So he says, it can be sent to my mother. Of course, he's dead by then. The question whether he would be embarrassed for the private remarks to be read, well, he's dead. He doesn't care. But with the last will, don't we have the same situation? After my death, do whatever you see fit, no?
There's a certain amount of that in it. Can I just pick up on one thing that you said there, which is really, which again is very interesting. You said, I think quite rightly, that people of that generation, his generation, wouldn't think anyone would want to publish his letters. I mean, it's only in the subsequent years when Wittgenstein has become so famous that there's been this interest in his letters. But that's a very good reason to for him to have ignored them when he was writing the will. But now somebody looking at it legally 70 years on will have to deal with what the will says and try and work out the logic, if anything, of the will. So that might be a reason that that somebody would judge that the correspondence was included. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I don't think I think that he's talking here about his philosophical notes. You know.
Well, first a remark about the coded passages. I mean, he doesn't specify in the will that he doesn't want them to be published. So he just says to the trustees, publish everything as you think should be published. So he doesn't exclude the coded passages from that will. With regard to the correspondence, why are you so sure that Wittgenstein didn't think that someone would want them to publish? I mean, he has been interested in reading correspondence by other writers.
Yeah, this is I wanted to ask whether in his time
yeah.
there were already published correspondences from previous generations of famous, important people.
Oh yeah, certainly.
He's joking in one of the letters to Ben Richards. He's talking about this when he says, I spoke with a publisher and he wants to publish all our letters, but your drawings are too difficult to reproduce, and you should not make so complicated drawings. So he was talking about this.
Perhaps he didn't care. I don't know. I suppose the correspondence with, say, Ogden or with the Vienna Circle, he must have regarded it as a philosophical discourse, no? Yeah. Because it's all about philosophy, especially with Ogden. So this is philosophical writings, but the letters to his mother or to his siblings, I can't. I don't know. It's conjecture.
Wittgenstein's letters, I mean, it's naturally they are distributed to all the people he sent it to. So how can the trustees dispose about letters? They are somewhere in the world. So I don't think Wittgenstein was thinking about any correspondence when he wrote this last will. I cannot imagine that this.
Unless you interpret the will really in the sense of the copyright in all my unpublished writings and also in all the manuscripts and typescripts, so also in the letters. So they would have the copyright in the letters too.
I mean, it's possible, but I don't think it was his intention. And may I ask the second part of this sentence to go back, because it says, now it's the first time I recognize, he says, and also the manuscripts and typescripts thereof. Yeah. So he speaks first about the writings, so the text itself, and then about the physical objects itself. So I would understand. But what follows? Of as they think best, so they can dispose what they think is best. But subject to any claim by anybody else to the custody of the manuscript. What does that mean? This last part.
I suppose maybe he was thinking that, his family may have wanted to keep what they had, as a memorial or something.
Yeah.
But I really don't know exactly. We know that physically the first batch of the Nachlass to come arrived, at Rush Reese's door or whatever. So, Wittgenstein had arranged that, yeah.
But Jonathan, you said once if you speak about this Austrian part of the Nachlass, which remained in Austria, that it was splitted by the family, and one part also came to Cambridge immediately, without any selling or something, and only the Stomborough part was sold. So
It
And
didn't.
the coda part.
no,
Alfred,
not the
because
coda part.
but it was also from Stomborough. Yeah.
Yeah, no, which a part of the manuscripts were in, I don't know why, but were part of the Stockert, I think, family.
Sjögren, yeah, Sjögren.
And they gave it also to Cambridge for free, I think.
Yes,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
again at the end of the 60s.
Yeah.
So it was only this Stomborough part which was sold later to National Library. And maybe this has to do with this reading of this the manuscripts and typescripts thereof to dispose.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, no, could well be the case.
But wasn't it that von Fricht visited Margaret Stomborough in Munchen almost immediately after the death of Wittgenstein, and she gave him some materials, other materials she didn't even know she had, and were discovered years later. Huh?
She showed it, but he didn't give it.
She showed him only, yeah. Okay.
And later, if you notice, some years later, they were lost suddenly and appeared again from the Coda Nachlass.
Yeah, because she gave them to Coda as a memory. Yeah.
But nobody knew this in this. I think for 20 years almost, they were lost.
Okay. Okay. Do you want to move on to another part of the discussion? I mean, is there anything more that you want to show from the last will, Alfred? Or
no, not
this is all.
The other parts are very private and very nice things, which some private memories he gives to Ben, for example, his French traveler clock and my fur coat, and the complete edition of Grimm's fairy tales, and Hernach by Wilhelm Busch. Okay, and Enscombe gets the whole furniture, but I was thinking, which furniture? Did he own any furniture?
He didn't have anything. Well, obviously he had some things. If he writes, he must have had, yeah. If I may tread a little bit further territory, because previously we spoke about now what is still locked and what is allowed. The common perceiving of the facts is that everything is allowed except culture and value. Now here comes the question of what is a creative act or not a creative act, which I find very interesting as much as I've heard from Alois about it. How can culture and value be locked and Zettel not be locked, or even the investigations for that matter?
Radmila, only a very short remark. I think the question actually is are there any examples except of culture and values where are more than one copyright, where more than one person has copyrights? This is the question.
Okay.
It's clear that Wittgenstein has the copyright of all of these works, but are there any other persons involved which could have who could have other copyrights? And in the case of culture and value, if we agree that von Wright has copyrights here for this special kind of collection, let's say, then this would last 70 years after his death. Is that true? That means 2073.
Wow.
Can I just add a corollary to that? If von Wright does have the copyright to the published culture and value, and yes, that would go to 70 years after his death. That means that the manuscripts would then fall back to 2039.
Yeah. You mean where they are taken from?
Yes, yeah.
So they would be free, but this special collection would not be free. It's a little bit strange. But
Also, what means free? Free to publish on paper or free to publish anywhere? What about publishing it only online, like this Italian website on
no
Wikimedia?
difference.
No
I think-
difference?
No.
No, it's pretty much the
Publication
same.
is publication.
But Alois, if I may ask you, what is a creative process? And but this is a huge future. It can't be said everything here, but you're working on this.
I could right away pass the question on to Jonathan, because everything is loaded into that concept of creative act. And I suppose Georg Henrik von Wright can be entitled to claim that his work of selecting and arranging Nachlass passages to the work Culture and Value has created a separate layer of work, a separate work layer. So the work of Culture and Value is different from a work which would have been Wittgenstein's work alone. While with the philosophical investigations, at least with part one of the philosophical investigations, the work which was created by the two editors, Rush-Rhys and Anscombe, is not different from the work which was created by Wittgenstein. So Rush-Rhys and Anscombe have no separate copyright in the investigations, while von Wright has a separate copyright in Culture and Value. Now, I think it's Culture and Value is not the only case. I would think that philosophical grammar, remarks on the foundations of mathematics, there are many others.
Which is interesting.
Now, when it comes to Zettel, I don't know, because one question is, has Peter Geach rearranged the Zettel or not? And is his rearrangement significant enough to create a separate work that was different from the original Wittgenstein collection of Zettel?
For example, the grammar, philosophical grammar.
Yeah.
And there is no evidence, Jonathan, you knew Peter Geach, that there is nothing remaining to suggest what has been done.
No, I didn't really know him. It was Arthur who really knew him. But I understand that he rearranged Zettel, I think according to subject, but I may be wrong there. But yeah, I mean, I think what Alois has just said is really spot on in many ways. I mean, again, you've got to not think about us discussing this, you know, I'd like to think with a glass of wine, but I've got a cup of coffee here. But two lawyers going at it in a court with a judge judging, okay? And I think that the lawyer for the holders of the Wittgenstein copyright would push very hard for the fact that very few of the publications were essentially typographic copies of the typescript. I think you can argue for two. You can argue, as Alois has said, for the first half of Philosophical Investigations, first part, and for the Blue and Brown books. Beyond that, there is more, and as you go on, it seems to be more and more editorial intervention. And that's where you come along to the question of whether it is another piece of work, you know. And you know, it's hard to predict what the result of a legal battle over this would be, because you think of remarks on the foundation of mathematics. Well, it's quite a few. There's a lot of it is, a lot of the volume is made up of, I mean, it's similar to the manuscripts involved, yet there are a lot of things such as, just simply choosing what to bring together, and also the actual mathematical sections, how well they represent what Wittgenstein was saying or trying to say. So, with that, it's hard to tell. But then when you get on to Rush Rees's work, he's far more interventionist in a way. Going back, I think first half of Philosophical Investigations and the Blue and Brown book are probably the only two you can pretty much definitely say are a publication of Wittgenstein's original.
Sorry, I'm a bit eager to come a little bit back to the Culture and Value publication, and I'm a bit eager to hear from Jonathan something about the following. Now, is there a notion of a virtual work? Let's suppose that Wittgenstein says to von Wright, you have the Nachlass, there you find remarks that are all marked by a C in front of it. Oh no, he does use C for other remarks. So let's just say K for Kultur. And of course, we know that Josef Rothhaupt has collected those remarks that have a circle in front of them and published them as Kringelbuch. Now let's say that Wittgenstein said to von Wright, you will find remarks marked by a K, and they all have to do with Kultur. I consider them a philosophical work. Please publish it as Culture and Value. Now, it's in the Nachlass, it's only there as a virtual work, like the Kringelbuch is only there as a virtual work, if it's a work at all by Wittgenstein. But let's say that there is written evidence that Wittgenstein conceived of the remarks marked by a K collectively as one work that he wanted von Wright to publish as one work. Would that still then create a separate copyright for von Wright?
I mean, that's a very difficult one. I mean, it's a very, very interesting question, because we know that Wittgenstein himself created typescripts by marking. It is it's hard to say. I mean, the whole thing about the artistic intervention of an editor, it's a big continuum, with them doing absolutely nothing at one end and doing a great deal, far too much at the other end. So I mean, I would say that if that was very much the case, and you'd have to know that was the case, that was closer to, say, Philosophical Investigations than to culture, maybe we can say Culture and Value as we know it now, without that information. But
you wanted to say then philosophical grammar. A large part of which is also just the typing out of a virtual work.
But more complex, I think.
Yeah, well, and that brings us to another question. I mean, like philosophical remarks, I mean, almost, well, by far, most of it is just DS 209, the 209 settle typed out. Then there is a small appendix. So how do we deal with that? Could one now, since this is published in 62, it was the first time, right? It was, or 1960 even. could one now republish on one's website the TS209 part of philosophical remarks?
64, I think.
I can check it. I thought it was
I think first edition was 64. But anyway, it was
Yeah.
before 1970.
64, right? Yeah. How do we deal with that? I mean, if 90% of it is just typing out a TypeScript.
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, what am I thinking of? Philosophical grammar, maybe.
No, I'm now thinking of philosophical
Yeah.
philosophical remarks. Yeah.
Is this a new edition, Alois?
Well, this is the Blackwell edition, but
This is the original edition.
this is the English translation of the Philosophische Bemerkungen.
Is it German and English?
No, it's just English.
Just
This one is just English. Yeah.
So that's the what 1930?
Yeah. The 209.
Yeah.
The 209.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, it sounds as a good argument for saying that it's that you know that too may be regarded as just the a typographic version of a TypeScript by Wittgenstein. So maybe we should include that. But
only the 209 part of philosophical remarks, because it contains some appendix with some more. I mean, I've made a catalog long time ago, and there's also bits from 214, 215. Yeah. Which is also just typed out.
Yeah.
But Rashmis has put it together. So
yeah, I mean, it sounds to me, well, I don't know exactly. I don't know how people would regard this, but I think that he's probably not done enough in terms of choosing the items and bringing them together to make it a new artistic work. But other people might disagree.
So I think there is no doubt that a facsimile, or let's take the microfilm, the Cornell microfilm, that cannot create another copyright. I think that's very clear. And my question would be, is the Cornell microfilm a publication, or is it not? Because if this is a publication, then all of the Nachlass would be published before 1971. What do you think? I would not call it a publication, because it was it sold, or was it only distributed to certain institutions?
I think it could be sold.
Really?
Yeah. But yes, I mean, I've never been sure about the Cornell microfilm, because certainly, I mean, if you're just making a copy of something, does not
create the copyright.
Yeah.
But is it a publication itself? Because there were only a small number of copies, I think, or
yes. I mean, again, I don't really know the answer to that, I'm afraid.
And Alfred, the copy of the Cornell copy that was distributed, that lacked a few items, and the secret code passages were on the whole covered. So not everything was then published. I mean, you could.
Interesting, yeah.
And I don't know whether it is a publication or not.
But what
I would have thought it's in a normal formal sense not regarded a publication.
What would be different if we regard it, if we recognize it as a publication? That would mean it is the case number. Which case is it then? In the 4 cases of Jonathan, I think it is the 3rd case would be.
Yeah, yeah.
And that means but then it would mean it has the same, it is also, it lapses with 2021. So it is then all this Nachlass would be free now.
Yeah.
In the exact version of the manuscripts.
But the question is the Cornell microfilm a work? That's yet
Pardon,
another
pardon?
issue.
I
Well,
couldn't understand.
does it have work status? The Cornell microfilm does not have work status.
No,
Copyright protects works, right?
yeah, we agree about this, but,
Yeah.
but it could be a publication. This is
But
the
it's
question.
not a work.
Not a work in itself. It's a work of Wittgenstein, but not of other people.
Well, I would think it's not a work by Wittgenstein in the sense we are talking about here.
Yeah, but of course it is his manuscripts.
Well, okay.
It must be a work of Wittgenstein anyway, because otherwise it has there's no author at all.
Well, I would have thought that we deal with a bit more specific formal concept of work here, not anything written.
Alois, I'm just talking about this point. When you look at these 4 cases, and it says published before 1989. And this is the question: is Cornell recognized as a publication, and then it is before 1989 and also before 1971. This does not mean it has a special copyright in itself, but it is a publication of Wittgenstein's Nachlass. But of course, this is an interesting point that some parts were just blacked out, and so it is not a complete publication.
Maybe I'm just confused here. I wonder, does any one of do you know whether one could challenge the view that the Cornell copy is the publication of a work? Could one challenge that?
I mean, it was done by Malcolm.
No, I mean, the question is whether you can regard the entire Nachlass as a whole as a work. That's the question, really, as a work which is protected by point 3 here.
I think if again it came to law, I don't think there would be a problem with with the Cornell publication being assessed as to whether it's a work or not in terms of the effect that it would have on the Wittgenstein copyright. It's kind of the view of a work seems to be, as I say, you know, more or less whatever the person publishing it wants to be, almost. So it can be a poem, a short poem, or it can be, you know, a series of texts. But I mean, it will certainly make a difference, as Alfred has said, as to how we regard the copyright. And again, I suspect that whether that falls to a British or an American court, they're both run under common law systems. So again, it's a case of argument, precedence, opinion, as opposed to rules, facts, whatever. Yeah.
What about the copyright on the on those machine drawings that are also in the Austrian National Library? I think also sold by Thomas Stomborough. You remember the combust chamber and so on, because they were patented in 1913 or 1912, so published, used before his death. And
I think this is a very good example for case 1. It was published during his lifetime. It's clear.
Or for example, the blueprints of the house drawing, the house plan together with Engelmann of the Kuhnmanngasse house, which was also published in the sense that it was submitted to authorities and the building was built, so published. This is also under this category, I suppose.
As far in English, in UK law, patent law is different from copyright law, although they cover by the same act. I don't know what the situation is. Obviously, I don't know what the situation is in Austria, but I really don't know anything about patent law, I'm afraid, so I can't really offer anything on that.
A publication must be made available to the public. I think this is the
publication.
But it must not be made available by distributing copies. It can also be made available by open access, for example, in a library. If you have access to it just for anybody, it's published.
It is it fulfills its purpose. A drawing of a machine is to be either patented and then used so the machine can be built, or a plan for house is for the house to be built, to be allowed by the municipality and then built, and both were done.
But was it available to the public? I mean, could anybody come and see?
I suppose we have to check at the municipality of Vienna what happens when architects submit plans asking them to be approved so that the building can begin. But I suppose today I think everybody can have a look if people know that these plans exist, of course. Then it must have been not dissimilar. Okay, I'm just trying to categorize now that you are talking about these 4 categories to put names to the categories, to put faces. So the first category is obviously the tractatus. What about the wartime diaries? They were not published, of course, but okay, no.
But you need the Wörterbuch for the
Wörterbuch, the vocabulary,
Wörterbuch.
I don't know if this is it a creative act, but I would say so.
Oh yes, in his case.
May I come back to one question, sorry, about the Cornell microfilm and the Cornell paper copies. is it relevant whether von Richt called it a publication or not? Whether any of the trustees called it a publication or not? I think they didn't call it a publication. They just said make the Nachlass available, make the microfilm available.
To selected researchers, I suppose. Yeah. What means available? Also,
Well, it's available, making available. That's right. I mean, I can make you my manuscript. I can make my manuscript to you available without publishing it.
Okay.
So, who made this Cornell microfilm? Was it the trustees or was it Malcolm?
It was at least under the auspices of the trustees, and under their super. I mean, they had the final word. Yeah.
Why was it done at Cornell? Because Malcolm was there, or the technical equipment was best at Cornell at the time?
I think because Malcolm was there and got his library to do this. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he take the initiative, I think, to do it. Huh?
Okay. Yeah.
And he was, but I think, Alois, there is some kind of misunderstanding. You are speaking about the complete microfilm as one work. I think that's not the question really, because I think as Jonathan, as you said, any part of it, any manuscript or even any remark of it has a copyright of Wittgenstein, of course. It is part of his work. It must not be a work at the whole. Maybe this is not, I cannot, I don't know how to decide this, but all the parts which are in the microfilm are of course works of Wittgenstein. Or do you see this different? It must be his work, because otherwise it would be of work of nobody. Or
doesn't the form decide as well? Because Wittgenstein takes the form of writing a book or a manuscript. A microfilm is completely different form of putting it out in the world. No, it's not on paper. It needs a special equipment to be seen and read. Isn't it like somebody I'm taking my phone, scanning pages of a book and then saying, this is a book by Wittgenstein, while they are actually only photos on my mobile.
Let's take the Wittgenstein source. It's the same. If you have the facsimiles on Wittgenstein source, it's of course a work of Wittgenstein, or?
Yeah, but it's a work by Alois actually, or University of Bergen. No? Because also the aesthetic aspect, the organizational aspect, the IT work, it is much more than just printing a book.
You again under English law, you can have a separate copyright in the layout. In a printed book, it would be the layout, the typography. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of similar to that. I'm not talking about all the wonderful electronic texts. I'm just talking about the facsimiles. Mm-hmm. And you can kind of say that the images are copyright is works of Wittgenstein, but everything around it is copyright of the University of Bergen or something like that. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No.
But again, I don't really know how this applies to websites.
Yeah. So under the first category, what else? There was this article that he published where he actually heavily criticized. Please help me. I'm not too good. He published an article in 1912, I think, in Cambridge.
Just a book review.
review.
Book review.
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the.
Coffee.
Yeah, genau, exactly.
Sorry?
The author was Alois Raffé.
Coffee.
Coffee.
Well, I don't know how to pronounce the name.
Is it CO?
Isn't it this?
Coffey. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, and that's it actually.
Well, then you have the the Wörterbuch is there.
Yeah.
You have some remarks on logical form.
There's the article he published in.
I mean, what you mentioned at the beginning, Jonathan, the some remarks on logical form published in the Proceedings of the Aristotelian Society supplement. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you have a letter to the editor in mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this is really it, I think.
According to my, the engineer drawings are not published.
Yes,
right?
I have them. I have them at the beginning, and the plans for the Kuhnmanngasse. Although I think, of course, the engineer drawings are under UK law. They were found in Austria just because his nephew sold them to the Austrian library, but they were patented in the UK. They were drawn in Manchester and patented in the UK, so totally under UK law, I think. Okay. And then under the second category, for any work unpublished and still unpublished.
But I just have a very stupid, simple question. Why do we treat the patent drawings and the Kuhnmanngasse plans under one?
Under
point one. Are they considered published?
Yes, yeah.
During his lifetime?
Yeah, he gave them free. He put them in the public space. He patented the drawings and he built the house.
Okay, so is that enough for being a publication?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about this.
I'm not sure either. We have to look into that, I think.
Okay, but it at least can be looked at. In any case, they are intellectual copyright, exactly as the philosophical writings, I think, no?
Yes.
They are creations by Wittgenstein.
Yeah.
What about the lecture on ethics? It was a public lecture, and so it was in a way also published by.
Was it?
By talking. It was made available to the public by Tolkien? Yeah, this is a point. I don't know if this in English, in Austrian law, there's a difference between publizieren, publication, and appearing. Erscheinen means that you must have physical copies of something. When a book is appeared, it is erschienen. But if it is published also, if it is made available, for example, in a radio.
Did Wittgenstein allow for the lecture on ethics to be known after its deliverance? He delivered the lecture. Did he allow afterwards it to be in the hands of people and read?
No, I mean just the act of talking is itself a publication. For all the people who were present in this lecture, but make a question mark, Radmila. This is.
Well, I'm not so sure of that, but if does it make a difference if there's one person and his dog there or 100?
Yeah, this is a difference. Yes, but.
It's the same like, for example, a concert today. It's one thing to buy a ticket, go to a concert, hear it. If the concert is recorded, then it costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time until it becomes free, so that millions more can listen to the concert, no? The same with a public lecture. You have delivered it, but it's another question whether you want other people who were not there to read it, to know about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is of course a difference, Radmila, but now it's just a question if it was published during his lifetime. And if it is enough to make it available as a spoken word, it would be published. But I'm really not sure if this, under British law, English law,
Okay, yeah.
if it is called a publication by speaking.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it comes under the same sort of thing as works of art, like a play, you know, or something like that. I don't know, but.
Okay, let's move on. I think under the second category fall many still to be published works or writings.
Yeah.
But what about the third category?
Excuse me, Radmila.
Yeah.
The second case here, now the question is now relevant, is cornel microfilm a publication? Because if it is a publication, then it remains nothing in case 2. Then all his Nachlass is already published before 1989. This is why this question is important, I think. If we call cornel microfilm a publication of the Nachlass, then all this material is already published. And then it would
well, except the items that are not included in the cornel microfilm, or the items that are only partly, or those parts of the items that are not included in the cornel microfilm. Like 239 is, to my knowledge, not included in the cornel microfilm, right? 227 is not included there, right? Oh, but of course, I mean,
180, also 183.
183 is of course not included. Yeah.
Would possibly 2132? Would is the annotated copy of the big typescript in there? Would it be?
Yes, it is. It is. That's
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think not all the coda items, they were missing at that time.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
142 and so on.
Yeah. 142.
But this would change a lot, I think. If we really think it's a publication, then it would not, the copyright would not last till 2039, but it is already lapsed.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely the case. Yeah.
I cannot really think that it is a publication.
I also would not say it is a publication.
Of a, well, I don't think that the cornel microfilm or the cornel printed copy falls under point 2 here. Otherwise, you know, I think we would have noticed that institutions and people take it in that way, and we would now have lots of republications and new publications. I think the fact that it doesn't seem to be understood in that way can be taken by the court to signal that it is not a publication in that sense, in which it could fall under point 2.
Okay, we can return to this if you remember something more, but let's say in the third category, where died less than 20 years. Now here the wartime diaries, the recto sites, of course, the recto pages, no?
So all, Radmila, all the publications of Maxwell and Surkamp, the first Werke-Ausgabe is here.
Okay.
Wittgenstein's Werke.
So Surkamp?
No, not die eine philosophische Betrachtung. That
Okay.
was only published. Eine philosophische Betrachtung, which is in the Surkamp, that was, oh no, sorry, of course, that one is there too. That was published in 1970.
I
But,
think
but,
there's only a few things like
but not Bemerkungen über die Farben.
not
Bemerkungen über die Farben. That was published 1977. So that
or,
would,
or also die Denkbewegungen.
yeah.
Okay,
So-
Denkbewegungen.
So Radmila, when it comes to Surkamp, it's not the entire Surkamp Werkausgabe, which is under 3.
Surkamp until 1970.
Well, what has been published in Surkamp until 1970, but the Surkamp Werkausgabe contains more than that. It
Yeah.
contains, items that were published later.
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's one question: what about revised editions, like the Bemerkungen über die Grundlagen der Mathematik? There was a new edition after the 56 edition, and the second edition was published in, what was it, 70? In 67 was the second edition, right? And okay, no, so that is not, I have to check. And the general question remains: what if there's a new edition, a significantly changed new edition?
I think you've hit the nail on the head again, Alois, by saying sufficiently changed. I mean, if there's a second edition of a work which is essentially the same or very similar to the first edition, there's not a copyright issue there. You know, it just continues the copyright. In fact, that is the author exercising his copyright to publish another edition. But as you say, if it's significantly changed, if things are added, what happens if something's added, like in remarks on the foundations of mathematics?
Now let's assume for a second that the second edition, the significantly changed edition of Remarks on Foundation of Mathematics, was published in 77, not in 67. So
yeah,
what that would then we would have the first edition fall under 3 and the second edition fall under 4. Is that the idea?
or maybe part of the second edition falls under 4. I mean, this is a real court case job, this one, you know. Who knows? Who knows?
Alois, I didn't understand. Why do you think it makes a difference, the first edition or the second? The first edition was 56, I think.
Yes.
And then.
And the second was still before the 20 years were over. But if the second edition was done in 77, let's say.
But the
then it's
question,
more than 20 years.
The question is still, is it a separate kind of copyright in creating this publication, or is it only Wittgenstein's copyright? You would say it's also copyright of the editors?
Well, I would think that when it comes to the Remarks on Foundations of Mathematics, the editors have a separate copyright.
Okay, but it would also be true for the first edition?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
In that case, though, I think the copyright, if the editors have the copyright in the book, these 4 cases don't matter anymore. And Wittgenstein's and the copyright in the manuscripts published in the book go back to 2039.
I'm a bit lost. I'm
Well, what I'm saying is if we say that the editors have a copyright in the publication of remarks on the foundations of mathematics, either edition, they have because they've introduced significant artistic choice, content, whatever, then they have a copyright in the publication, but this then leaves the manuscript copyright date unaffected.
Mhm.
So that goes back to 2039.
Yeah.
But Jonathan, before in the beginning we spoke about culture and value, and I said it would if it would be Van Wricht's copyright, it would last until 2073.
Yes, that's the book, that's the publication.
Yeah.
But the manuscripts on which it's based would go back to 2039, I think. I mean, because you're creating two separate copyrights there.
Yeah, but what would it mean practically if you can use the manuscripts for a free publication after 39?
Yes.
But you could not use the publication. Okay, I cannot really imagine what that means practically.
It means another court case.
It could mean that the Italian project, for example, could use our website to extract all and only the remarks which were published by Georg Henrik von Wright in Culture and Value, and republish them on its website in 2040, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, in as much as we have no separate copyright in our representation of these remarks.
Yeah.
Forgetting for a moment about that. So they just pick the remarks, and let's say they are then in the Nachlass is in the public domain, including our representations of the Nachlass, including our transcription representation. Then they could just reproduce von Wricht's selection on their own website, but not reproduce the actual book, of course. They just reproduce the selection by picking all the remarks that von Wright selected and only those remarks from our website. Something like that? Does that sound fair?
But Alois, it's especially this kind of selection was von Wricht's creative act. So if you follow von Wricht's selection, then you would hurt the copyright, I think.
I don't know myself.
So under which category is culture and value? Under category 2 or category 4? I'm a bit perplexed.
It was published when?
77?
77.
Yeah. So
it is 3. No.
No, 4.
No, 4. 4. Yeah. Okay.
So, but then we can say 50 years after publication, and that means what was the publication year?
77.
77. So it is 2027. 50 years more.
Unless you are thinking that the second edition of Culture and Value,
which is very important,
is again a different one.
And which year was it, your edition?
94. 94. But of course, the first edition would then in 27 be public domain, right?
Yeah.
The first edition.
Yeah. It would be 2020.
2027.
I don't know. You wrote 1970. Radmila?
No, no, Surkamp from 1970. This
so.
is something different. Culture and Value was published in
1977.
Oh, then it's not free, Alois. Then it is until 27.
Yeah, in 27,
Yeah.
it would be free.
This would be great. So it's quite soon, actually.
Yes,
Although regarding Alois
but-
might remember, Marjorie and I were fantasizing about a
well,
new.
but sorry, we forget about one thing. Why have we suddenly forgotten about counting von Richt's years? The 70 years after his death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yes, legally,
right.
yes, but I have to say, von Fricht's family and also the Helsinki archives were very cooperative towards allowing a new English translation or a revised English translation.
Yeah, but that's fine. But if they were not, do we agree
Yeah.
that it's
Yeah, yeah.
70 years after von Richt's death?
Yes.
Yeah.
Unless you can pick the same remarks from the Wittgenstein Archives website and can argue that this is not in conflict with von Richt's copyright.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2027 would only be true if we see only Wittgenstein as a creator, but if we have two creators, it is
Yeah.
longer.
Yeah. And then again, the currently used English translation. I remember when we asked, so the Finnish people were not the problem, but when asked in the US whether a new translation of Culture and Value can be issued, we were told by, I believe, the University of Chicago Press that it's Winch, it's Peter Winch, no? The translation, yeah, that it was legally locked and that the University of Chicago had the exclusive rights for America at least, and would not allow a new English translation. Beziehungsweise would allow for a lot of money, and there the project ended because nobody wants to pay any money. The public domain is understood as something that is for free. Yeah, Culture and Value. So not only Wittgenstein's or von Fricht's work, but also the work of Peter Winch when talking about a publication in English. Yeah.
I don't understand how that press can legally forbid that others do a new translation. Is that possible?
I don't know.
Agree with, oh, sorry.
Sorry, Sir Jonathan.
I agree with you, Alois. I think that if it's a translation of a work by von Richt, it is von Richt who, or his heirs, that get to say whether there can be a new translation.
Yeah.
If it's a translation of a work by Wittgenstein, it's Wittgenstein's heirs that say whether there can be a new translation. Certainly in terms of English copyright law anyway.
Yeah, yeah. No, perhaps only because this was a case with an US publisher, and the negotiations were between the US publisher and the University of Chicago. Something might have gone amiss, but in any case, it is not possible this year. There was a bit of a hurry to use the Tractatus year to bring as much Wittgenstein as possible to the general public. And they wanted a new Tractatus translation, which everybody advised against. And Marjorie and I suggested Culture and Value, and something happened. Perhaps somebody else, probably in the United Kingdom, should take up this subject again, because also Alois and many others are the opinion that a new translation of culture and value would make sense. Would be interesting. Yeah. Okay. I also wanted to mention, to ask all of you.
I just need to say that I have to go at latest in 50 minutes, but we can go on another time.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
First of all, but I just wanted to say that it is too large and not the place here to discuss, but the ethical dimension of all this. Two questions from me. First of all, Wittgenstein was so particular with every word he put to paper, never mind published on paper, and the ethical dimension of all possible people today who jump on this wagon, the public domain. Free culture is very well said, but there has to be some responsibility, because Wittgenstein is all about responsibility towards oneself. This first, and then a week ago, there is a Wittgenstein exhibition at the Leopold Museum in Vienna that Alfred knows. And I visited with members of the Wittgenstein family, and we were confronted by, let me explain. There are lots of photographs, and there are photographs with Ben Richards and by Ben Richards, and of course with Skinner. Yeah, and the texts are in German and in English. And in German, they are written as Freunde von Wittgenstein, and in English, partner. And I asked, why partner? Now, Alfred might have an opinion himself as well, because partner is not a friend. And the question is, did Wittgenstein have partners in this sense that we understand today, or were they really very close friends? And I was told that there are Wittgenstein connoisseurs and owners of the photographs today that still are on Miss Anscombe's position that nothing private should ever be said. Wittgenstein would not have liked it. And I personally find this ridiculous. And I argued that Wittgenstein is part of global humanistic heritage. It's not up to him to say. He wouldn't have said anything anyway, but we can't judge with these parameters. I think. What would Ludwig say? We don't know. But still, there is this question: would he have allowed? Would it be in the Wittgenstein canon, in the Wittgenstein tradition, in the doing it the right way, to disclose so many things about him privately, also in photographs? I'm not asking for an answer now, if you have any short opinion, but I think these two questions could be discussed at a live conference or in future Zoom talks. The moral dimension.
I think you could add to your question two alternatives. Would he? Well, I mean, how shall we understand the question? Because one alternative is to understand it in the following way. Would he have allowed for it, knowing what the world is like today? You know, that comes in addition, because I may not permit, starting from certain assumptions of the about the world, but if I was able to continue to learn after my death, I may, and I may have, changed my mind. And Wittgenstein might also have changed his mind, about certain things.
Yeah, but with such great personalities, I think it's like asking, would Sir Isaac Newton, would he have liked, because he also was also a particular character, like Wittgenstein, didn't like anybody and anything. we can't ask, we can't regard these questions. Now, Wittgenstein is closer to us. He was such a pessimist. I remember Brian McGuinness wrote that during the war, Wittgenstein wrote to somebody, whatever comes afterwards will be much worse than the Second World War. No? So very likely he might have expected that it will get worse and worse, sort of, in his on his terms. But wasn't it more about learning more, evolving into better human beings, and if they need my photographs, so be it? Oh. No, I don't know. I only find it, we are not the ones to decide this, but exactly equally somebody else is in the position to say that nothing private should be known. Not even Mrs. Anscombe was in this position. And anybody alive today, I think, doesn't have the moral right to say you are allowed or you are not allowed to know this about Wittgenstein or not. What do you think? I'm just wondering.
I think this is a very sensible question. I remember the example of Franz Kafka, who told his friend Brod, destroy everything of my Nachlass, which all of my manuscripts. And if he would have done it, we wouldn't know anything about his great novels like The Castle and The Process and so on. So I cannot imagine that Wittgenstein really wanted all of his letters to be published. I cannot imagine all what I know about his personality, but nevertheless, it's a very, very big contribution to know his person and also to get many, many important informations out of these letters, for example. And so there is a kind of right, I think, of our society or whatever, of our Wittgenstein researchers to know this kind of documents. Also, I think he would not be happy with the idea of the complete correspondence, for example. If you ask him, do you like to publish all your letters? I cannot imagine that he was happy. But okay, this is a sensible question.
Yeah, okay.
I'm a great believer in the fact that biography does contribute to our understanding of the individual writer. I know some people would draw a very thick black line between the two, but I do feel it helps us. It nudges us towards understanding various things about the individual.
Especially in Wittgenstein's case.
Yes, yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm very much in favour of it. Having spent my life as an archivist, and I'm sure Alfred kind of feels the same, we spend so much time making information available to people so that they can do their research. We don't really like saying, no, you can't look at that, you know. So, yeah.
I'll have to go now. I'm sorry, but
So you don't have an opinion? No, you don't have to. Sorry, Alois, of course.
My opinion is that I don't know, and I think I don't know. It's
okay. We'll leave it for the next time. No?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you, everyone.
And I'll send you the video to see before we do anything.
Well, before I leave, I think from my point of view, we shouldn't publish this. It's not, I think it's not as, it won't be as valuable as it should be for publication. I think it would create more questions that we can't answer at this point. So I would, as I feel now, prefer want that it is not published. Yeah.
All right, but I will send you the video to
Yeah,
see it yourselves anyway, no?
Yeah.
Okay,
I also have the feeling there are too many unclear things in
all right,
touch.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
there are two, yes, yeah. There are too many things that I think that will be up to somebody's opinion, whether they're backed by great legal knowledge or not. So, yeah.
All right. Okay.
But
So-
I do think this was a very, very useful exercise, and it's,
Yeah.
you know, it reminds me of all the great holes in my knowledge that really need filling in.
yeah.
So yeah.
Perhaps this is the way to learn how to do a usable video
Yeah.
next time, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
To see
Bye,
you
bye,
all.
bye. Ciao.
Have a nice